The issues affecting you. Revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 In Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Shapiro. Americans have been reaching for the stars since the launch of Explorer 1 in January 1958. One Lancaster County man has had his camera lens trained on dozens of space launches and landings, from the Apollo to the Space Shuttle to Artemis. Tom Usiak was there taking photographs and watching the growth of space exploration. Tonight, we'll hear his story and look at his images and those of his brother, Mark. We're putting space photography in focus. Joining us now is photographer Tom Usiak of Lancaster. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Susan.
Tom, what got you interested in space and photography?
A combination of watching the first men go up in space and getting my first camera in 4th grade, taking pictures, looking at all the books and magazines that came out on the manned programs, and it just grew from that.
Just a great combination. You said your mom gave you that camera?
My first camera my mother bought for me with S&H green stamps.
Yeah, a lot of people probably don't even remember that. But
maybe some of our older ones will.
Your first job, so to speak, was through Millersville University, correct?
Right. I photographed the launch of Apollo 15 while I was a student at Millersville in the summer of 1971 and had coverage in the summer edition of the newspaper.
Now, when you go to these launches and landings, you have to have credentials, don't you, for a specific outlet?
You have to have what that NASA considers a legitimate media credentials request from that publication to accredit you, and that's basically what the main requirement is.
I imagine that first time you didn't expect this would turn into such a long career.
No, but I didn't.
Well, I know you've taken tens of thousands of photos probably, but we're going to take a look at your top 7 you gave us. So let's take a look at the first one, which is the Apollo 16 launch.
Apollo 16 launch back in April 1972. Headed for the moon there. We became pretty good friends with one of the guys that are on there, Charlie Duke, who was the lunar module pilot for that mission.
How far away are you from this?
3.5 miles, and that's with a telephoto lens.
I was going to say, what kind of lens are you using, and who's in the foreground there?
Other members of the media, the press, writers, photographers, combination.
And this was shot on film, I presume?
Yes, there was no digital then.
Yeah, such brilliant colors there of
right.
the flames.
Well, the film was restored by my brother, who does that for a living.
Oh, wow. All right, well, let's move on to a shuttle launch.
Now, this is a little different than the first one, where this is a remote camera photograph, and we'll get into that in a little bit here when we show some more photos. But that's an unmanned camera that I placed the day before and set it up, focused it, lined it up, and let it run by sound. Here, the electronic box heard the sound of the rocket.
Wow, and so you're at a distance from that?
That's about 1,000 feet back.
Wow, and you're obviously kind of looking down a little bit, it looks like? Or?
We're up on a hill, up on like a mound, looking straight across.
All right, well, let's move on to another shuttle launch from the roof of the 525-foot-tall vehicle assembly building.
Right, that's where they assembled the moon rockets, assembled the space shuttle, and now are assembling the Artemis SLS rocket. It's 3.5 miles away, it's 525 feet tall, and it's the best seat in the house for shooting any launch in that vicinity down there, because you don't have to worry about a head or an arm coming up in front of you. You get an occasional bird fly by, and that's about it.
And all natural lighting, obviously.
That's all the lighting on there is coming off the rocket boosters.
Wow, that's just beautiful. All right, well, let's go on to our next one, a space shuttle landing at White Sands, New Mexico. This was taken by your brother?
That was taken by my brother, Mark. It was the one and only landing of the space shuttle at White Sands, and it was because the primary landing site at Edwards Air Force Base in California, the lake bed was wet.
Ah, it almost looks like it's sitting on the mountain there.
It's coming right over the mountain.
That is impressive. All right, let's move on to another space shuttle launch with a special wide field camera.
That's correct. It's taken with a camera called a Noblex, where in this case the lens moves across the film, and it creates one big sweeping image. And if you were trying to duplicate that shot with a regular wide-angle lens, everything on the sides would be distorted.
Be curved, kind of.
Curved,
right?
yeah. And this just as your eye sees it, it sees it.
And it's kind of a panoramic view.
It is. It's one issue. It's nothing stitched together. It's one frame of film.
And these are medium format, most of these images?
These are medium format images, yes. The White Sands landing was 35 millimeter, the Apollo 16 was 35, and everything else we've seen was medium format.
All right, we're going to move on to the first launch of an American astronaut on a Russian rocket to the Mir space station.
That's correct. That was in 1995 at Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And the American astronaut is at the top there on the left. His name is Norm Thagard. The other two were Russians, and they flew up to the Mir.
What was that like to travel there?
Very interesting. That could make a whole show in itself about life over there. But it was very cold. One of my cameras froze up. In fact, it was that cold that I couldn't focus it.
Wow.
It was 15 degrees below zero when that picture was taken.
Oh my gosh, wow, it's amazing it still worked at all. And finally, we have a collage of Artemis.
Correct. That is the current heavy launch system of the United States. It's called the Space Launch System, and it's the Orion spacecraft. And that's a remote of the first launch.
Oh, Tom, these are just spectacular. And coming up, we'll show you the camera setup, what goes into that to take these spectacular photos.
This is WGAL8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We continue our conversation with photographer Tom Usiak, who's taken countless photos of space launches and landings over the years. It's incredible.
Thank you.
You talked a lot about the equipment and using remote cameras. How much goes into planning for one of these events?
Well, at the very beginning of the program, it was much more intense than it is as the program matured, because you got to learn all the sites and everything. As time went on, you always make sure your cameras are functioning, your batteries are charged, you have all the right lenses that you want to use, and you have all your camera housings and that before you go out to the vicinity of the launch pad.
Does it make you nervous because you really only get kind of one chance as it launches, right, or a couple of chances?
It did, and that's the hardest part was the film days. You had to wait till you got back and to process your film. Now in the digital days, you pick up your camera, sit on the bus, and you either look at your launch or you look at nothing. But you know right then before you get back to the press site how you did.
Do you find with digital you snap a lot more images?
Absolutely. With film, we were restricted to 36 shots, and with the Hasselblad, 12. You know, digital, you can thousands of shots on a card.
Right, in no time. Let's take a look at a photo that shows the remote cameras.
This shot here explains what a remote camera does compared to a manned camera. The view on the left is a manned camera shot from 3.5 miles away. The photo on the right is a remote camera from maybe 1,000 feet away. And you can see much more. The view on the left is obstructed until the shuttle clears the tower. On the one on the right, you see it the whole way up.
Yeah, you look like you're right on top of it. And moving on, the camera setup at the launch pad.
This is basically what goes on the day before. The camera there is in one half of the tube, and in the other there is the electronics, which makes the cameras work. The device there in the front, the gray device, is off the shelf from Radio Shack, a decibel meter, which then was reworked a little bit, some additional electronics that you see behind it there, and that gets closed up, and that's what that gray device is what is listening for the rocket.
So it's all by sound that
all
this
by
goes
sound.
off. That's
all by
so
sound.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Looks almost like scientific equipment there. And here's some more camera equipment set up.
This is what we call we always did closeout shots. And that is what you saw that was open there just a minute ago. That is closed up and ready to go with the white blanket over it to keep the heat off.
So you then have to leave and trust that it's going to stay in the same place and be okay?
Yeah, it's usually 24 hours before a launch in that area.
And we have a nice collage coming up of, this is all from different camera sites.
Different camera sites,
launch.
one launch. Two of them on the bottom, the second and fourth in from the left are man camera shots. All the others are from the remote cameras. And as you can see, the difference there, the one on the bottom where the shuttle is up in the air, that's when you first could see the entire shuttle, whereas the remote cameras, you can see it the whole way up.
Tom, what do you think about a still image as opposed to someone looking at video of a launch?
A still image to me, it freezes time. And it lets you look and take into account what's actually happening there. You know, video, especially with the shuttle was a quick up and gone. With a still picture, you know, you can look at it, like I said, you know.
It's really a split second and you're getting a memory.
Exactly.
All right, well, stay with us, because coming up, we're going to talk about some of the notable people who Tom has met in his connections.
This is WGAL8 In Focus, coverage you can count on.
We continue our conversation with photographer Tom Usiak, who has taken photos of not only the shuttles, but of the other spacecraft, but of the people involved. Are you sometimes starstruck when you see someone so well known?
A while back, yes. Today, they're more like acquaintances and friends that you've gotten to know over the years.
Is there anyone who says, I don't want my photo taken, or they're all okay with it?
I haven't come across that. Never really.
Well, let's take a look at one of your photos of Eileen Collins.
Eileen Collins, a very, very personable woman. Takes time to talk to everyone that wants, to speak with her. Of course, she was the first female shuttle pilot, and she was the first female shuttle spacecraft commander.
Now, where is this? What's she doing?
This, she's giving an interview here. This is in Washington, D.C., at the Udvar Hazy National Air and Space Museum when they delivered the Discovery there.
Oh, that's such a great candid shot there.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to certainly a well-known face here.
There's John Glenn at crew arrival. That's a shot from my brothers. They would fly in from Houston in those jets there behind, and they would get out and come to the microphone and say a few words. Well, he just got out of the airplane there, and someone was yelling to him. Might have been his wife or children, and he was just waving to
Giving him a big wave there. This was what, 1998,
yes.
Right?
1998, yes.
And these are obviously other photographers there trying to get a shot?
Those are NASA and private media. That's all government media that's out there. All the regular media were back, not far, but they were behind ropes. You had film crew there, you had a video crew, you had still photographers.
And you always want to catch someone in action like that, right?
Right. You always want to get them doing something, so it has a little bit of talking point to it.
Right. Our next one is Gordon Fullerton and his wife Marie. This
was at White Sands where the shuttle made that one landing, and he is one astronaut that he has passed away. But we got to know his wife, Marie, there very, very well. She's a dear friend of my brother and mine. We met her at a space convention years ago. We gave her lots of pictures of Gordon, and they were just, this is another shot of my brothers. They were just, enjoying it. This was during a post-landing ceremony where he spoke, and then there were other speakers up there at the time when this photo was taken.
Oh, and they both look so happy.
They are. There's two fine people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Let's go to our next shot.
Now, maybe some of the viewers will recognize this guy.
I think so.
I think so. James
Can
Doohan.
you say Star Trek,
Scotty.
right?
I'll tell you a quick story. I hope we can get it in. There was a contractor, NASA contractor, giving a talk right off camera. And he was explaining the payload or something. Scotty, James Doohan, walks in. And this was right around the time of the Star Trek movie was supposed to come out. And all the people just literally walked away from the other guy, came over and started asking him questions about Star Trek, you know. And he did it in his Scotty voice. He said, "I can't tell you that." You know?
That's funny.
And, but yeah, that was just the thing. He was there in the press site with just the rest of the media.
Oh, what a great moment. And moving on, a Russian cosmonaut.
If you look there in the picture, this was an astronaut walkout. This was another photo opportunity that was given on launch day. The man, the cosmonaut there waving, and this is again two of my brother's shots. There was a Russian photographer behind my brother, and he yelled something to the cosmonaut. He waved, and then he yelled something else, and he gave 2 thumbs up.
So something in Russian, I presume?
Oh yeah. He yelled in Russian, and so what you see there is a wave and a thumbs up.
I imagine that was a little unexpected by your brother.
Usually they come out, and at that time they were just coming out and walking right into the van there, but they stopped when this guy behind my brother said something in Russian.
Oh, that's fantastic. And finally, we have a couple who became very well known.
Well,
in the last months.
This crowd here, you have the 3 pictures, the first 3 there from the left to the right, are each time they walked out from the crew quarters to get aboard the Starliner and was scrubbed.
And
then
this was Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams?
Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, yes. And then the last one on the top there is when they were standing, posing, and when they actually flew. And then on the bottom are some remote camera shots of the launch of Starliner.
Fantastic. Well, coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll look at some of Tom's published work.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus. Coverage you can count on.
We're wrapping up our conversation with Tom Usiak, a photographer who has been on many rocket and shuttle launches to take photographs. And much of your work has been published in a lot of different outlets. What's that like to see one of your photos in a publication?
It's very rewarding when you see one of your pictures, your photos in print, because it made it all what you went through to get it worthwhile.
I guess a lot of people had to say that's the one. We want that for the cover.
Yes.
Well, let's take a look at some of your some of your work that's been published.
Aviation Space, which is a couple of the covers that I've included, was a magazine out of Washington, D.C. in the 80s and 90s. And that's a superimposed picture of a balloon and a shuttle launch that we did.
That's a great juxtaposition. Now, obviously, they did that when they edited this cover, right?
Right. That is another shuttle launch from a different, that's a remote camera shot from a different.
And this is Aviation Space?
Aviation Space, it was called, yes. It was published by the American Society of Aerospace Education.
Who do these publications appeal to?
Educators, science community, general space enthusiasts, and that's the bulk of it. The majority of it's space enthusiasts.
And this is?
That's the premiere issue of Final Frontier magazine in 1988. It was right around the time that the shuttle got back to flying after the first accident.
Some of these publications are no longer, correct?
Right. This is no longer, Aviation Space is no longer. The 2 main ones that are still there are Ad Astra of the National Space Society and Air and Space of the Smithsonian, both of which we've represented. That's a cover we shot before the International Space Station went up. The article that it supported was all the different nations that were going to be with the space station.
Very interesting. And there's the shot we saw earlier.
That's the landing by my brother out at White Sands, New Mexico.
When you take a photo like that, do you think this is the money shot.
It was, and you can also see, previously we saw the whole image, and then you see how it was cropped and reworked for the cover of a magazine. So it was a horizontal shot that turned into a vertical.
Tom, for a kid who just loved space and then photography, what's this been like for you to witness so much space history?
It's been a great ride. I'm very, very honored and fortunate to be able to participate in something that I would really liked and wanted to do. And basically that's my basic point of focus for the past years in photography.
And you've really made some lifelong friends, haven't you?
Absolutely. The space community down there is very friendly and small. I know people I'm still friends with from the Apollo days. Wow.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your memories and your fabulous photos.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for WGAL 8 in Focus. For all of us at WGAL, I'm Susan Shapiro. And join us again next Saturday night at 7 o'clock for WGAL 8 in Focus, right after NBC Nightly News. And you can watch each episode of In Focus, plus WGAL's latest newscast, original programming, and more. Just download the Very Local app and stream for free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV.